Even today, how many people do you think really understand the mechanism, what's happening behind the username and password? When people invented the internet, we didn't think about the cybercriminal industry, right? So cyber attack in this space is just a question of time. It is gonna happen.
So let me start with a question, staying a bit in the area of entrepreneurship and connecting it with cybersecurity. So three people that you're probably also following are Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. All the three go to space now. What link would you take between their space endeavors and cybersecurity?
Wow, that is an amazing question. And this is where I would say, history repeats. When you do something for the first time, the last thing you think about is a space pirate, right? When people invented the internet, we didn't think about the cybercriminal industry, right? So cyber attack in this space is just a question of time. It is gonna happen. But of course, this is too early to think about it because the cybercriminal industry is focusing on somewhere else, ransomware and all those. Then they'll go to automotive, then they'll go to probably aircrafts, and then they'll go to space shuttles. They will get there. It's just, we used to have pirates in our sea, right? Now we have pirates exactly in the same fashion. They want ransomware by hacking your system. Like I said, I'm not Nostradamus, but you don't have to be Nostradamus to see the future of space industry, that there will be cyber attacks in the space industry. However, on a side note, this is a phenomenal thing that happened. These three gentlemen going to space is just phenomenal. For me, it was it's not only when they went, especially when Elon Musk started sending rockets and talked about colonizing Mars and everything. I used to read a lot of science fiction. I never ever thought that I, as a person, could really go and live in Mars. This part of my brain was never ever occurred to me. But when Elon Musk really started talking about it, he was sending a rocket and stuff. It was kind of like a light bulb coming. Hey, I never thought that I could really go and live in Mars, right? That gives us a lot of hope for people like us. Maybe Mark, you and me, we will have a coffee in Mars someday.
Consider it. Why not? I mean, could happen, especially as there's a lot of pace. So maybe let me rebound also with that pace thing. So this, you said at the beginning that the challenge or the problem arose when the cars got connected. And when they get connected, the underlying thing is that we have over-the-air updates. We're also talking about that. And the underlying principle is that we have software-controlled things. And this bonds also a little bit with the question before with the rockets. They are also software-controlled. So the rockets of Elon Musk of SpaceX, they were for the first time running with Linux, if I understood correctly. They had some Linux terminals, which even touch screen. And so this is really a fundamental change in this space industry because before, as we know from many films, like the famous one about the role of women in computer science and so on, these programs, they were developed a lot of time ago, then they were certified and so on. And what SpaceX is doing with the rockets is similar to what they did with the cars. So now we have software, used commodity software, at least two parts. Would you say this increases the risks or this decreases the risks? Especially having in mind that when you use, for instance, open source, you have more eyes that are looking on it and so on.
When you're sending a rocket to the space, and you have definitely software, one is open source. The risk part is, I think this has to do with the motivation of the attacker right now. So I must go for full disclaimer. I have absolutely no knowledge about the cybersecurity measures that have been taken in a rocket software right now. So with that in mind, I must say that usually when we start, like MSN, started with zero cybersecurity. They are unencrypted, just sending out messages, unencrypted. Everything started unencrypted. Cell phone industry started unencrypted. Nobody thought about cybersecurity. So I'm assuming they're not thinking about it. So the risk is there. The risk is there. Now, is it worth for a attacker to attack a rocket? Does he have the motivation? That is really the question. To answer your question, if you would use open source, is it more risky or not? I mean, hard to say, because have we seen less vulnerabilities in Windows than Linux? So I don't think open source necessarily make it more or less risky. It's all about measures, if you're taking on measures or not. And like I said, I have no knowledge if there is any measure or not, but I would assume there must be some measures, but at the same time, not thinking that there are space pirates that, like the way we have for, our credit card exchange, data exchange. Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I attack something is that I have a big fuss in the media. And if a rocket is exploding and afterwards it's clear that I attacked it, it would be a huge motivation. So,
yeah.
And in that sort, so you were talking a lot about processes, automation, outsourcing, or like outsourcing of yourself at least. And so outsourcing and cybersecurity, what would you say is the relation between the two? Is it a good idea? When is it a good idea? What is it? And especially also in your domain where you're super knowledgeable in the car industry, how could you sketch a little bit the development? So was it at the beginning no security and then suddenly security came in? Maybe also sketching a little bit the role of standards in that ecosystem.
Great question. This is a very good question. It's worth paying attention to some of the points you made. You just said that, the motivation, it will be a big thing to be able to explode a rocket. If you're the attacker, it will be a great achievement. A lot of people ask me, why would someone want to hack a car? First of all, one motivation can be stealing, but this doesn't scale. You have to steal millions of cars. That's just not very practical. But like you said, there can be political motivation, just to kill someone, right? So the motivation, there can be from any angle. The question is whether we're taking enough measure or not. Now, to come back to your question about, we started with no security, is outsourcing cybersecurity is a good idea or not? I don't have the data for space industry, how many suppliers there is behind a rocket, but behind one vehicle, if you consider tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, there are about 3,000 companies involved. 3,000. That's a complex supply chain. There are 100 million lines of codes in a car. There was a comparison of lines of codes, and I think automotive industry was the second, right after Google. So the entire Google ecosystem has the highest number of lines of codes, and the next one is automotive, which is we have more lines of codes than a rocket, than a space shuttle. So that's a complex supply chain. There has to be companies working. And that's why we standardize things. We have a new standard called ISO 21424, which also gives a guideline. How do you secure those interfaces and who is responsible for which security? Because end of the day, in automotive, it's a liability issue. If I supply a software part or a component, then I should be liable for that. And there should be a mechanism to trace that liability. So it's a question of liability, and it's a question of cybersecurity process. You have to work with external companies. It's the cybersecurity culture, the mindset. We are only human, right? Even in my company, in the beginning, I mean, now we take it very seriously because we are automotive supplier. We have to be certified. In the beginning, we knew that there are risks, but it was a question of budget, right? Okay, we'll take that risk. We'll take that risk. We're not gonna start with a $250,000 enterprise security solution. We're not gonna start with that. But you need that. You know that you need it. So in the beginning, when I was in my early part of my career, when I was doing some cybersecurity project for automotive industry, this was mostly research project. I was still at the university. Back in those time, remember the Fraunhofer thing? I was actually partly also involved in Fraunhofer. My professor was the director of Fraunhofer. So I'm not going to say the name of the OEM. They had to cancel one project where they were trying to ensure privacy. We did a nice research. It didn't pass to a series production. The reason is nobody's going to pay for it. If it is a feature of announcing where you are and sending out pictures in Facebook, just opposite of privacy, people probably will pay for it. But if it's about protecting your privacy, nobody's interested. So this where the financial challenges the automotive industry faced. It was not intentional. that, hey, we know there's an attack, we're not going to do it. It was just not possible. It was not financially viable. If there's low probability of attack and this is financially viable without taking any measure, you will do it, right? You will do it that way. It's a commercial decision.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you very much for that very interesting answer. So maybe I start in that direction. So cybersecurity, investing in cybersecurity requires awareness of the threats and of the need. And what would you say in the past years? Did the awareness rise? Do the people more have the impression that the investment pays off? Are they aware of the risks? Is everybody aware of the risks? Yeah,
it's a great question, and awareness is really the key word. I mean, you gotta bold it, underline it, and really awareness is really the word. Because the example I just gave of Facebook, it was an awareness issue. Nobody had any clue what was going on. Nobody had any clue. They were just giving their username and password. Now, even today, how many people do you think really understand the mechanism, what's happening behind the username and password? Now, we have this GDPR. We just click one button. Yes, I give you my consent. Who understands the complexity of that? If we have more awareness than before, for sure. The reason is not that we got cybersecurity for no reason. We simply have more attack. It's more of a stake. So if someone wants, it's so easy to go for a ransomware attack and ask for $500,000. I now have a number. Right? So this is what we used to do. My boss used to say at Fraunhofer that, hey, if we go and tell them there's a cybersecurity problem and all those, nobody's going to pay. But we have to say risk management. Then you can put a number. Then all of a sudden, there's budget for that. So I would say it is underestimated. The risk is underestimated everywhere. The risk is underestimated in the corporate world, massively underestimated in the automotive world.
Very good. So the last opportunity where we did something together, you were showing a movie with cars that were crashing the street. And one important actor in cyber threats or cyber attacks today are also states. So do states already play a role in attacks against vehicles? Is there something known about it? How do you estimate the risk in the future that a certain state will attack cars of a certain manufacturer to weaken the economy or something like that?
It's a great question. So we have seen attacks at a scale that is just not possible for any, forget about script kiddies, not even possible for professional cyber hackers and criminals. And those antivirus companies and the cybersecurity companies, they categorize that this has to be nation state. Nobody knew which nations, and we have more than one cases of such attack. One interesting fact, in the United States, there are two kinds of weapons. You need straight away your president's consent and order to launch. One is nuclear weapon, the other is cyber weapon. So cyber weapon has no boundary. It's not only cars, it can do anything. You can do anything. You can launch nuclear, you can launch a car attack, you can launch everything with cyber weapons. So cyber weapon is deadly. And I think this is it's massively underestimated, the power of cybersecurity for public in general. And also, I mean, we're already having cyber wars between states. And of course, we don't know. We have only seen the tip of the iceberg, right? What comes out, we have only seen. And what's going on, we have no clue. Probably we will never know. So like I said, there can be political motivation to attack your car. So there's not only financial motivation to steal your car, that's one, but there can be political motivation. So this is deadly. When Cambridge Analytica happens, we lost our data. This is where we're talking about people's lives. So that is where I think this is massively underestimated. And that's why we have the regulations like ISO 2144, UNSCE WP29 coming up. And these are good, which will force people, even though there is no business case, the business case is if I don't pass this regulation, I cannot put my car in the street. So that is going to force OEMs to comply with those regulations, take some measure it's never sufficient. Cybersecurity is never sufficient. You can never say you're foolproof because there will be always 0-day vulnerabilities, unknown attacks that you've never seen. There will always be the case. So there's no way you can say you're foolproof. The only foolproof thing is, absolute disconnectivity, a metal cage where you have absolute zero connection. That is the safest place. Also in safety, if you don't want to be hurt, don't even walk. If you walk from here to there is a risk. You can get injuries. The same for cybersecurity. However, we try to mitigate as much as possible, and the mitigation will happen due to those standards. And that's why I think there is a peak in the industry right now. And hence the opportunity.
And you already switched over to safety because now we talked a lot about risks and negative aspects of the softwareization of the industry, and it also has positive effects. And I was also thinking about safety, for instance, when you think that you have an over-the-air update and then your car suddenly has the functionality to protect pedestrians better or to protect other cars and so on. So what's your opinion, or what is the opinion of the market and the industry on the positive effects towards cybersecurity of this over-the-air update softwareization of the products?
Over-the-air update is something that has to be for not only for cybersecurity. The way we have been developing, especially European OEMs, German OEMs, we have a very traditional system of developing, and which was very good. I personally, and be very honest, I've said this in public many times, and I'm going to say it again, that I've criticized 5 years ago the Tesla paradigm. I was wrong. Now the German automotive industry is going to that same kind of Tesla paradigm, right? So, my reason was, one big ECU, one spot of failure and safety. We don't really have the safety data and all those, but now we're moving toward it. Over-the-air update is gonna be something that is not only needed for safety, it's gonna be needed for features, because we have to constantly send updates when it comes to autonomous vehicle. We will have new objects in the road. The road size, shapes, and everything will change. So we have some kind of scooters, e-scooters that we see today. So you will have to send new data, new updates all the time for features. And the best way to send a patch for cybersecurity is, for all those is over-the-air updates, right? So over-the-air update is going to be one of the key things that we will have to use. At the same time, this is really the paradox. Over-the-air update opens up backdoors, right? There are more attack potential. In order to send patches from the attack, you have to have over-the-air update. And when you're doing over-the-air update, you are opening up more doors. That's why you have to create an infrastructure that it's not that you ship a vehicle and it's over. Cybersecurity has a life cycle. You have to also think about at what point I will stop sending patches. It's like a Windows machine. At one point say it's over, we're not gonna send any support anymore. So for automotive, we didn't really think about those things because we didn't have any updates or software updates in that massive scale. Now we have to think about those life cycle and what happens afterwards, what happens after decommissioning as well, and what will be the lifespan for that.
Very good point there. So do you think that in the near future we will have an Apple business model for cars, meaning that you have your car and it's driving for 2 years and then afterwards it's by software getting a little bit slow and you cannot use it anymore and you have to buy a new one? Or you have to buy a costly update because without the new software, it's just not working. Because so far we don't have it. So far it's like we have cars and as you say, so there were not too many considerations about until when is the end of life of software for this car. And if it stays connected afterwards, you have the same problem like with an old phone. You don't have the security patches and then you're basically open for the non-0 days anymore, but 0 days for the software stand that you have.
Great question. Now, the Apple model or the service model, if it takes place, which I think it should with autonomous vehicle, that's the only way we can probably pay for an autonomous vehicle because it's all about money. That means car as a service now. The ownership model, 99% of the time, your car, my car is in the garage. Nobody's using it, right? And that's why the lifespan is like 20 years. Now, if the car is 24/7 moving, then the lifespan 2 years is almost equivalent to 20 years. There are a lot of opportunities for the OEMs. So now we don't have to have the mechanism in a way that we need to build everything for 20 years. So save a lot of money. At the same time, within this 2 years, or 3 years or 5 years, what have you, you have to make sure that things work. So that could really be a model. This is where the opportunity comes again. So some people are saying that if we move to this service model, then those companies who are selling 1 million car per year, probably they will send 100,000 or 50,000 because the idea of ownership will be gone. But if the car lifespan goes down that much, again, this is where the opportunity will probably remain in an equilibrium. So I agree that could well be the case, and I think that should be the case also for the environment.
Very interesting, because this as me for me as not at all an insider in this car industry, it's a very interesting thought, and makes also a lot of sense. Next point I want to cover is data. So you talked about machine learning as being a great tool for success. Today we have the Teslas that are collecting data from the cameras. We have the Waymo system cars that are driving around, and basically everybody who has autonomous cars is collecting data, and typically they have a monopoly on that. Do we, from an ethical consideration, need regulation there that this data for the good of humanity and security of these systems should be more open, so that all cars could benefit from better navigation and so on, especially when it goes to autonomous cars?
It's a great question. It's a great question if the data should be available to everyone so that this is used for supporting and making the humanity better. I think this is a very good ethical standpoint. And anybody with sane mind would support it. I see the following problem. Because in autonomous driving, data is really the name of the game. It's like in machine learning. Blame the data. So if I have more data, I have more advantage. So giving out this data would mean that I'm giving out my business advantage. So will that happen in real life or not? That is questionable, because we're talking about huge corporate interest here.
Yeah, good, very good statement. Thanks. Let's get a little bit more concrete again. So this famous over-the-air update, how is it secured today? Can you describe the process a little bit? I mean, not super lengthy, but just like what is happening, who is involved, are the OEMs involved, are the entities signed, are they locally checked, how are the ECUs getting it, and so on?
Yeah, there are some security mechanisms that the UNECE WP29 regulation imposes. So we have seen all the major OEMs, the RFQs that we're handling today, also the things that we're developing today, they have to comply with the UNECE WP2 regulations. So there is encryption mechanism, signature on all those things. Basic security for over-the-air update is there. So the updates usually happen from the OEM. So here's again, people who are listening, if you want to know a real technical idea and real technical opportunity for making your company, or this is where it is. Here's the problem. We've been using AUTOSAR for a long time. AUTOSAR is an open standard for automotive software. So it's like there's a basic software, which is the OS, and then on top there is an interface called RTE, which communicates with the application software, which is really the top part of the. You can think about an OZ layer equivalent of in automotive software. Now, AUTOSAR is for embedded system, really real-time, safety-critical system. It has been very, very tied to the hardware and so on. One major problem in over-the-air update with AUTOSAR is it is very hard, if not impossible in most of the cases, to do differential update. That means if you do an update, you send the entire software, you flash the entire software. That's the problem, right? I mean, it's gonna be a problem. Now, AUTOSAR Consortium started Adaptive AUTOSAR, or AUTOSAR Adaptive, which is again a POSIX-based OS, which is gonna revolutionize the way this is going in the Tesla architecture direction. So that is where differential update is also possible. And if you guys want to really know the future of automotive cybersecurity and automotive, that is Adaptive AUTOSAR. And there are so many, since this is a POSIX and open source, there's so many security problems and opportunities for you, and you can really, really make a lot. So also the opportunities are, in case of classic AutoZar, we call that now classic AutoZar, one company provided the entire stack. And I think adaptive AutoZar is so vast, there will be companies just providing probably security part or the identity management part or some parts of it, and you'll have your business. So there's a tremendous business opportunity there too. And yeah, to come back to your question, it is secured as part of the UNECE WP 29 regulation.
The next keyword there that comes always to mind is quantum computing. What will be the effects of quantum computers to cars? If you have an answer to that, because it's a super open question, of course.
Mark, I love your questions. So quantum computing also takes me to the crypto world. I used to say it's game over when quantum computing is there. Yeah. And now I don't mind admitting that I was wrong at one point. So I was wrong with the Tesla architecture. I was again wrong with the crypto. I never invested in crypto. But now I'm going all in with crypto because of NFT, not because of cryptocurrency. NFT is gonna be everything. And this is what I've been telling my clients. For example, let's say Lamborghini or Porsche. Porsche is gonna make more money from their NFTs than their cars. This is gonna be the future. Now, if the theory that when quantum computing is there, no more crypto, everything is apocalypse, is true, which is theoretically, you and I know that this is going to be true, then everything is crippled. Then we have to think about quantum cryptography and all those in a very different way. And I believe that the crypto mathematicians will probably have some kind of solution before we get to real quantum computing, probably have quantum cryptography without really knowing anything about quantum cryptography. I want to say because I believe in the ingenuity of human. There are problems and there's not a single problem that we won't be able to solve. Starting from COVID all the way to if quantum computing comes, we will also have a solution for that.
And that bonds also very well with what you said before with the obsolescence of the cars, because if you have cars that only have a lifespan of 3 years, you can easily introduce quantum processors and so on, which you would need then in order to have these new software algorithms running. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So one question from the audience is coming to the ISO 21434 standard that you already mentioned. So what fascinates me always in the automotive world is that they are really using standards. And it's also from what you explained with lots of OEMs, heterogeneous systems that are getting created and put together. It makes a lot of sense to have standards because this might be the only way to reproduce something that has a certain quality level there. So the question is, what do you think about this ISO 21434 and if its application is sufficient to manage automotive cybersecurity?
It is a great start. We had nothing. We had no standard. The legislators didn't have anything to point toward. Now we have something. So it's a great start. However, it's never sufficient. Nothing is sufficient in cybersecurity, but it is so good to have something like this. It's hard. Like when we were doing research, we failed to push our research product to series production because there was no market. So there is regulation needed. Without regulation, no industry has ever implemented something that they don't need to. It's an extra cost for them. So it'll go from their budget, from their profit, from their shareholders' profit. So they will not spend that money unless they have to.
Can you say in a few words what the ISO 21434 is regulating?
It is not regulating. It's the standard which regulators can point toward. So the standard is really a parallel of the ISO 26262 that we had for a long time for safety. And the clever thing is they really try to do it in a way so that it doesn't contradict, theoretically, it doesn't contradict with the existing process landscape. As far as I know, this is the first time a joint effort by SAE, Society of American Engineers, and ISO together. So it's called the ISO/SAE 21434. Now, before ISO 21434, there was a guideline from SAE. So this guideline was taken as an input for the standard and the standard for road vehicle cybersecurity engineering. So the standard covers from cybersecurity management, cybersecurity culture, cybersecurity process, then cybersecurity, conceptualization, goal definition, requirement engineering, architecture, all the way to validation, testing, and decommissioning. Although the current draft, the decommissioning, there's not much in it. Decommissioning and everything is included in this standard. The limitation of this standard is it does not even mention the word autonomous vehicle. So it also does not talk about what level of automation, like we have SAE level 1, level 2, level 3, which level, what is possible. But the good thing about the standard is we have defined CAL level, cybersecurity assurance level, so we can categorize cybersecurity, which is a parallel to the safety integrity level of automotive that we have from ISO 26262. So there are a lot of good things in the standard. It's very well written. I really like the examples given in the standard. The examples are really practical, and one great thing is we have the V model, we have the ISO 26262 standard, and they try to kind of like make it in a way that harmonization will be possible. There are some critics to this standard saying that we should have really mentioned the automation level, SAE automation level 1, level 2, level 3. Not all those levels will have same kind of cybersecurity requirement. Well, I mean, we will definitely have different versions of the standard, but this is really important to get started, and this is a great start.
Very, very good. Very nice. Thank you very much for all these details. Another question from the audience is, what can I, as an owner of a car, do to increase its security under the light of over-the-air updates, autonomous driving, and so on? Are there any tips that you can give to end users, what they can do?
Great question. So as a user, it depends what car you're using. The most vulnerable cars are the cars which has a CAN interface, relatively modern, like 2010, 2012 CAN, and all those OBD2 port, and no encryption. Those are really the easiest one to get into. My advice would be, if you're one of those where there is no encryption, how do you know? You just have to look at the history of the car in some forums or something. Then do not connect any mobile devices. I mean, keep it as unconnected as possible, because it's your car. You're going to drive it for another 10 years, 5 years. I don't know how many. There's nothing you can do about it. It is how it is. Limiting the connectivity is a good idea. The cars that you're buying today, there are some security mechanisms with that. And the most vulnerable spot for your vehicle is when you're sending it to the garage. These days, they can inject a malware there. There's not much you can do about it. You have to be connected, but when you go to the garage. So when you're going to the garage, make sure you go to a trusted garage for your updates and all those. That's what I can say. And I think today there is not much tool in the market. This is again an opportunity for those who want to get into business. There is not a vulnerability scanner for a car. That could be one. That can be something that you can bring in the market. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question, Arthur. Next question from the audience is, what are the current research challenges in automotive cybersecurity? Also, what should be addressed? What are the big open issues for you for the moment?
There are a ton of them. Now, I'm kind of think twice to say it's a research issue in front of Mark and Mark's community, because you guys are from the university, and what looks like a research problem to us, probably not at all a research problem to you guys. So with that in mind, please take it with some grain of salt. If you don't think it is research, I respect it, I understand it. For you, only Fermat's last theorem is research, probably. Everything else is applied research. One of the things is intrusion detection. There's companies, for example, Argus was bought by $500 million because they had an intrusion detection system. To the best of my knowledge, this hasn't gone to series production because the infrastructure is not built for that. So if you can find a way to fit in an intrusion detection system in the current infrastructure, probably with adaptive AutoSAR, I think this is a great opportunity. Second is, again, these are not pure research problem. The CAN bus itself was not built with security in mind. It's like a broadcasting system. Everybody's talking. Everybody can read also. Whoever says, okay, this is the right one for me, this is the right CAN ID, and consumes it. It's very basic, right? If you can find a clever way to secure CAN bus without encryption. Encryption costs, CAN bus is it gets congested very, very easily. So if you can find a way to secure the system without really having to change the CAN infrastructure, because automotive industry, once they invest billions in a certain protocol, it takes time to, CAN is going to be there with us for a long time. We will move to Ethernet eventually, but CAN is going to be there. That's an opportunity for you. You got to find out. I know companies, some Israeli startups, they have some clever ways, but that's not the only, and I'm not allowed to say what were their clever ways because we have NDAs and this is probably patented. I don't know. But I could even think of, there could be some other smart ways to protect the data without having to encrypt. Remember, in CAN bus, if you have to encrypt, this is too much. Without encryption, how can you make sure that a hacker cannot get access to it? How can you block the doors for the hackers? Some other clever mechanism is a good way. So there's another research that actually this is from another Fraunhofer Institute. They got in touch with us, is when a car will be communicating with another vehicle, how do you know it's not an attack? How can you have a protocol that ensures that this is not malicious? So there are a lot of these research or applied research, to be more precise, in this community, applied research problems out there that needs to be solved, and there is probably a business potential also behind these things.
Thank you very much. And the last question as the time evolved, and spanning the bow back to your presentation and the leadership principles you put in. So how do leadership principles and cybersecurity relate?
Great question. How do cybersecurity and leadership principle relate? Cybersecurity and leadership, I'll be very specific here. There's nothing in this world you can do alone today, right? There is this archaeologist found a 23,000 years old weapon in the hills of Latin America, which looks exactly like a mouse, something that you can hold in your hand. It's a stone piece. It's a weapon that you use to carry in your palm. That's what we do. We carry a cell phone or a mouse in our palm, and they used to throw it. This is like a little bit pointed. So there's a difference between that thing and the mouse that we use today. That weapon, that ancient weapon, could be crafted by one single person taking stone from the nature, right? So one person could work. I was kind of like a person, like one-man band, I was like a solo runner all my life, right? I didn't have leadership, but there's nothing in this world you can do without people. This mouse, there's not a single person out there, unlike that 23,000 years back, who could single-handedly craft a weapon. There's not a single person in the world who can say that I can build a mouse by myself. Probably, there is not a single company who can say without external suppliers, we can build a mouse. And it's not even an exaggeration in case of automotive, when there are 3,000 companies involved, there's not even a country that can say we can build a car without the global supply chain. COVID has taught us, like now we have a problem that from China, there's like 53 weeks of lead time for a component. So now we know how dependent we are in the global supply chain. So be it cybersecurity, be it whatever, if you cannot lead people, if you cannot show the vision in a direction, if you cannot interact with people, nothing is going to work in this world. And that's where I think cybersecurity and everything and leadership comes together.
Great. So a big thank you in representing the entire audience that we can unluckily not see today. So what I liked especially about the presentation was that we had a large spectrum of your expertise, from leading a company, making money with it, investing in ideas and so on, to your expertise in the security field and so on. And so it was really covering a lot of aspects of security and businesses today. And this is perfect because cybersecurity is nothing that you can look at in an isolated way, but everything has to play together when it comes to cybersecurity. So thank you very much. It was a great talk, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure. And I'm sure, as you always said, if people have more questions for you, you will find Hassan on the internet over all the channels that you can think about, and he'll be happy when you get in contact. And I would also join his podcast and so on, because he has lots of more things. Also technology bits. He has weekly or daily updates on LinkedIn and so on. So he's a very interesting person to follow.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really, really appreciate it having me here. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for listening or watching. And I loved your questions. Like Mark said, the best thing would be if you ever write me to tell me if you found anything useful, or even if you have disagreed with me. I love disagreement. I love criticisms as well. So if you would get in touch with me, I'll really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much again, Mark, for having me. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for joining today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, share with your friends the information. The more audience we have, the more lively is the discussion. And so if you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy the summer. See you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.